Hello, and welcome to today's episode of the How to Choose Happiness and Freedom Show. I'm your host, Lauren Foster, happiness teacher and author of Happy and Free on Purpose, Daily Practices to Live and Love Your Life. My new book and the backbone of the entire mission at Be Happy First is to choose your life and choose your perspective and choose your thoughts and create a life that you love. So today's guest, I ran across her somewhere in my travels. And what I loved about her is that she calls her business Yes and. And I sometimes don't find out a lot about my guests until they're here so that we can meet them and learn about them together. But welcome today, Marin Laukka.
Thank you so much. And Marin Laukka, I know it's a tough name to get. Marin, long A.
Marin.
Yes.
Marin
It's
Laukka.
wonderful to be here. And isn't it true that we find each other in some corners of the internet? And then it's like, how did we even,
How
did we even connect?
I don't remember exactly, but one of my favorite things is that, banishing the idea that this is an either or universe, because it's not, it is a yes and we never have to settle. So I'm just fascinated to hear your story and how you're spreading this message in the world and how I can help.
Yes, absolutely. Happy to share. Happy to be here. So my story, I can start it in many different places. And I also have a book. So if you read that, you will get the whole spiel about this.
What's the name of your book?
The name of my book is Ready Enough. It's your 7-step guide for life's hardest decisions. So I incorporate my story as well as this decision-making process and a lot of my clients' stories as they have gone through the same process as well. And where I'll start with where Yes and originated is actually back when I was a dancer and thought that that would be my career path. And I loved dancing. It was my whole world, but it was also had a slippery slope in terms of image becoming the main kind of component, the main driving force, at least in my mind. And I love your approach of choosing how we're looking at things and knowing that we have the power to choose what we focus on. And sometimes, sometimes we forget that we have that power. And so I had a season of my life where I very much forgot or didn't realize that I was focusing on something kind of based on my choice. Also, mental illness has a different layer in there. But once I reminded myself, I can focus on something else. And in fact, it feels so much better and so much more well to focus on the big picture, not just one thing such as image, which is such a shallow place to stay. That was kind of the first roll of the snowball that got this whole thing going. And originally I actually thought Yes and would be a dance studio. It is not a dance studio. It is a coaching business. But the name I fell in love with far before I even knew what the business would be. And the name, as I can tell you're familiar with, is this concept of accepting what is and moving with it. So it's saying there's something in front of us, maybe undeniable, maybe fact. And yet there's a choice with how we relate with it, what we do with it, what else there is that we can focus on and move forward with that. So the whole story of Yes and even encapsulates that, saying it was a dance studio. And then I took with me what was happening in my life. That's when I got into psychology. I eventually studied positive psychology as my master's degree. And after that program opened Yes and as a coaching practice to combine all of my skills and experiences into my zone of genius to share with others who are also wanting to choose what they're focusing on, choose their version of life that most fulfills them, lights them up, and is aligned with their values and desires.
Awesome. It's a fantastic. So can we get a sneak preview at the 7 steps? I can't remember what you said.
7 steps for life's hardest decisions. Yes, I will give you a little preview and I'll give you the metaphor version because that's a little more fun, especially in terms of storytelling. So throughout the book, I incorporate a metaphor of going from kind of floating passively down a river to climbing a mountain and celebrating at the top of that mountain. And I also include throughout the story, we do not need to be like these achievement focused, hard working in the traditional or like societal way of hardworking of like, I need to grind and climb a mountain. That's not the point. The point is there's an adventure that has switchbacks. And when we get to the top, we can look back and look at that river that we were historically kind of passively floating down and say, wow, look how far I've come. And so with that metaphor in mind, this decision-making process is not only about making a decision and moving forward with that. Otherwise it wouldn't be 7 steps. I
Right.
really support through the whole process, which starts far before we even ready to make a decision. So the very first step is simply to create space. That you don't even need to have clarity in that space. You don't even have to have a direction set yet. It's just to take a step back. And that can be as simple as taking a big breath. That can be as drawn out as many years in therapy or coaching, or talking with someone that you really trust and care for. And through the 7 steps, you do eventually make that decision, but then also I hold space on the other end of that decision. What happens after we make decisions, especially decisions that are authentic and true to us, but may feel a little bit scary, and trusting that process, seeing the outcome, which includes the celebration at the top of the mountain, but also can include grief or challenge, or a realization that, wow, we have yet another journey in front of us. And how do we cope and celebrate and relate with that as well?
Nice. Lovely. I will, wherever you're watching this video or listening to the podcast, just look down and we'll provide links for you to go and learn more about Marin and find her book and find her. So tell us about how your coaching process works. Who do you coach and how do you help them?
Yes. So the title that resonates with me, and then I let my clients choose what title resonates with them. What resonates with me is alignment coach. So I previewed this earlier, helping anyone who's in front of me to really align their life, their relationships, their career with what is most true for their desires, their values, and even giving voice to their unique fears and circumstances, because that absolutely plays a role in it as well. And so I really have, in terms of coaching specifically, 2 main places people land. One is that one-on-one support, really tailored, more of that intensive feel of someone is either, wow, I'm feeling really lost and I just need a space for me to figure this out. Or sometimes someone is coming in and saying, I know exactly what my alignment is, and it's really scary, and I just need that one-on-one high touch support to help me get there. The other area I support individuals is through my group coaching program, which was a outcome of COVID, a quote unquote silver lining from that, because my one-on-one clients were really wanting a community space. So in the group coaching, we bring our genius together and really inspire each other in what alignment can look like, and give each other permission to live lives that are unique and truly true to us, even though they may not be what those around us are doing. Having that community space where it's not just us on this path alone, but an entire group of individuals pursuing this same mission has been beyond my wildest dreams of what I thought it would be when I started it over a year ago.
Right. Love that. Okay. So one of the things that I encounter a lot, and that I ask this of a lot of my guests, many people have had their imagination squelched so badly. Their limiting beliefs are so deeply ingrained that it's very difficult for them to even begin to imagine what it is that they want and have the idea that that's possible for them. How are some of the ways that you help people to get past that and to start imagining again and to start figuring out really what it is that they want?
Yes. Oh, that's such a good question. And I also see that as well. Again, that's why the first step in my 7-step process is space, creating space, because sometimes we're not ready yet to have a clarity or have a direction or make a decision or take action. That comes later. And so I have in the book many practices. It's very a tangible book. You can do it as you read it. But also to give anyone who's listening some nice golden nuggets of where to start. Again, I mentioned earlier, it can be as simple as taking one deep breath. And I give that example because I think sometimes, especially in this personal development space, and especially people who are attracted to personal development, sometimes myself included, can come up with this story, back to what you introduced, of what we tell ourselves, that it has to be this huge momentous thing that we do that will shift and that will bring us clarity. And sometimes it's actually almost the opposite, seemingly. And that's just to get quiet and to say, what am I feeling? What's here, and have that moment without any external noise, without anyone telling us otherwise, without ourselves, even all our different aspects of us to help pulling us in all these different directions. It's just to check in with that gut feeling, that intuition, whatever word resonates for you for what we're checking in with. But again, that stillness and that just space to just see what's here, just get curious and see what's there. Another thing I think is really important is getting support in any way. And that could be listening to this episode. That could be enlisting the support of a coach. That could be having an accountability partner in reading a book, or just getting a weekly or monthly or annual coffee date to check in and say, hey, how is it going? You said, last time we met that you really weren't feeling in tune with yourself or with what you wanted. Is that feeling a little bit better? And we're relational beings. That's something very much emphasized in positive psych of what qualifies and what is required for a good life, is to have those relationships. So I think sometimes even just reaching out for support, even when we don't know necessarily specifically what we need from that support, just saying, I need something here, and seeing where that opportunity might be that we haven't seen before, and getting that into our sphere can be helpful in that very first baby step toward the clarity that we're seeking.
Nice. Very awesome. Very aligned.
Yes.
I like it so much. Okay. So anything else that you want to share? I mean, that this is it's so very clear and so very straightforward that, yeah, well, you only told us the first step, but that's okay. That we'll let people buy the book and
yes.
and check it out. So if you had one giveaway to, just leave our audience with one thing that they can start doing today that will make them feel more aware of the infinite possibilities of the universe, and more aware that it's safe to dream, that it's safe to make your own way and do your own thing, what would you say?
Yeah. Another great question. In my group coaching program, I kind of had that as a center point of how do I reduce the overwhelm associated with any of this work. And so I take this stepwise approach of one baby step at a time. And so when you spoke to how can we feel safe in that infinite possibility, in that expansion, in the dreaming, again, back to really similarly, of course, this is all intertwined, that one breath notion of taking one step at a time as well. So for instance, September in my group coaching program, and every month we focus on something different. In September, which is the month that it is now, I'm not sure if that's the month people are listening, right. But we're refreshing our schedule is the whole focus of September. And the very first week, all it was to step back and ask yourself, how am I currently spending my time? And that could be just noting for yourself over the course of an hour or a day, what's happening here. And it doesn't have to be so detailed. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. It's just gathering that data, the data collection phase. We didn't even ask questions about what's working, what's not. That was week 2. And so it's really it's one small shift at a time. And what I found with this approach is that it helps us to feel safe. It helps my clients to feel safe in the process of development and change and growth, because it's not all at once. It doesn't have to be extreme. And it's really guided as well. And so we have that, of course, built-in support with the group coaching, but also if we're doing this ourselves, or you're following the book and you're seeing that also has a similar theme of really small practices, one step at a time, we get to taste that possibility without feeling so overwhelmed by it. And I think also that idea, and this is my research brain kicking in, if there are too many variables at play, we don't know what change actually made the difference. Right. And so one step at a time helps to say, oh, when I woke up earlier, that is what helped, not because I journaled, but just because I was up at a different time of day. And so there's a benefit in doing these, there's multiple benefits in doing these bite-sized steps. One, again, reduce overwhelm. The second is to not have confounding variables. So you know exactly what helped and what didn't. And then also to reduce that idea that we have to do it all at once, or even that it's necessary to do it all at once. Sometimes it's incorporating one thing into our life, and that makes all the difference of experiencing that bliss or that happiness or that contentment or that wellness that we know is there, and we're just feel a little bit off course from it.
Right. Yeah. Not knowing how to access it. That's awesome. Mm-hmm. Okay. So Marin Laukka, and the name of her book, say it again.
Ready Enough, your 7-step guide for life's hardest decisions.
Ready enough. I love that. And that's so true, is that a lot of us wait until we are to start anything new, to start a new business, to start a new relationship, to start anything. And we spend our whole time in the preparation, the getting ready to get ready. And so I love the message of your book. You're ready enough. Go ahead and do it, right?
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. And I think it relieves, I mean, I know this is what I've heard from people who have read it already. It just relieves this pressure that there is a right time. And if there's no right time, then why not now? And you might have some answers for why not now. And then that's okay to hold compassionate space for that. And if we're waiting for this magical moment for something to change, or for us to be completely prepared, or us to be completely 1,000% confident without a doubt in the world, will that time come? I don't know. I have yet to meet a person who has felt that way. Maybe they exist. But in my experience, as you can tell by the title, you're ready enough, and likely you are ready enough now to at least, again, take that one experimental step and see what happens.
Right. And that actually makes so much more sense than, and I have been guilty of diving in headfirst into things and gone, oh, what did I do? And I have also had the experience of going, well, I'm going to try this, and then I'm going to see where that goes. And I'm going to try this. And that way always is a much more peaceful, and, you learn as you go. You don't know what is beyond the next step until you take it. You can only go to the edge of the light you can see, and then there's more light. And yeah, it's much, much less stressful journey toward, and you get to change your mind. You get to go, oh, well, when I started 5 steps ago, I thought I wanted this, but now that I took these 5 steps and learned these 5 things, now I think that this is the direction that I want to go. And it's easy, and it's intuitive. It's very, very cool.
Yes, absolutely.
I like it a lot. Okay, cool. Let's see, we're at about 20 minutes. Is there anything that you wanted to add before we wrap it up?
I'm just with the title of this show and about happiness. Something I was reflecting on before coming on is what happiness means to me. So actually I would be excited to hear what that means to you as well. But for me, especially I have, again, my master's degree in positive psychology. So with that attached to my name, I often find myself, over explaining that happiness or positivity isn't necessarily the answer, or at least the story that we've told ourselves is happiness or positivity. And what I find more often than not, and especially when I have that one-on-one time with clients, when we dig to a level that's like the base, the foundation of everything, it's not really that any of us are seeking pure bliss and happiness 100% of the time. I think we have a notion of what happiness is, and that notion of feeling well, of feeling balanced is what we're pursuing. And yet sometimes it can get skewed if we keep it at this level of positivity or happiness and forget that the challenging emotions and all aspects of life are just as important and are inevitable. And so as I was preparing for this, I was thinking, it feels really important to remind myself, to remind all of us that happiness is incredible. And again, oftentimes what we're linking to happiness is that idea of balance and wellness. And so within that, we're already including the challenge and the all aspects of life, the fullness of life. And also just to highlight that it's not just about bliss or, positivity 100% of the time. Sometimes there's challenge, sometimes there's heartache, sometimes there's grief. And that doesn't mean that we're doing something wrong. That doesn't mean we made a wrong step. Sometimes that just means that's the season of life. And then it comes back to how can we relate to that while still fostering and promoting that wellness and that happiness that we were pursuing in the first place.
It really is a question that comes up a lot as to what is happiness and what is it to you. And I want to give you my spin on that. But you, of course, know the work of Sean Aker in the positive psychology world, right? Yes. He has my favorite video of all time was a TED Talk called The Happy Secret to Better Work. Have you seen it?
I haven't. Oh, sounds like I should watch it.
You must. It's absolutely hilarious and so on point. He's talking about how we have the cart before the horse, and we've pushed happiness beyond the cognitive horizon because our happiness is based on outside circumstances and reaching the goals that we want to reach. And it never, ever works, because when we get to that goal we set for ourselves, we just set another goal. So we never, ever are allowed to get there. Whereas flipping all of that around and going, you know what? in this moment, there's a whole lot to enjoy. There's a whole lot to appreciate. There's a whole lot to be grateful for in this moment. And when I choose to look at those things, then I feel good. And to me, happiness is a big basket full of all the things all the emotions that feel good: excitement and joy and anticipation and contentment. A lot of people will say, well, if you're content and satisfied, then you're not striving hard enough. I'm like, what? No. Being content and satisfied doesn't mean that you're never going to want anything again. And having if I had to put my whole mission into one sentence, it would be to be in love with where you are today and overflowing with excitement and joy about what you're creating tomorrow. And you're absolutely right. Without challenges, without loss and grief and the so-called bad things that happen in life, would not be a very rich life. There would be, there's no light without darkness. There's no happiness without sadness, or something to compare it to. So yeah, the challenges and the grief and the heartache of life are the dark colored threads that weave through the tapestry of your life and make a beautiful picture. So yes. that is, and I believe that happiness is universal, what it means, but what it means to you is very individual to you.
Yes.
So a lot of people feel really, really good and happy jumping out of airplanes. And I want to do that once. But I don't think that's going to be the thing that's going to make me feel so happy. But that doesn't, it doesn't make it right or wrong. It makes it a very individual choice.
Yes. Yeah. And I'm very much all about authenticity, authentic alignment at yes. And that notion is actually one that I've started to label as a really courageous notion, to self-define things such as happiness, to say, what does this really mean to me? Back to like, what do I really value? What do I really care about? And letting that stand without even justification or, others' approval. It's just saying, this is what it means to me, and accepting that and being with that and leading, anding from that place is such a stronger foundation. Of course, as you were alluding to as well, we always evolve and things will grow and things will shift. And therefore your self-definition will shift as well. And that's just part of it. But that doesn't mean we have to question where we're at right now. Can we be a little bit more trusting of where we are now? And I'm really glad you also brought up that bit about contentment. And this is one of the things I could go on all day about with positive psych literature. And it's because self-compassion is what my master's thesis was on. And there are so many studies that self-compassion helps us attain our goals and so many other benefits, but attaining goals being one of them, more than self-criticism. And yet in our society, we have that flipped. We think that we have to be hard on ourselves in order to pursue something next or something greater, when in fact it is the exact opposite. And I wish I could just scream that from the rooftops at all times. Be kind to yourself. And not only does that feel better, it will help you get to where you're wanting to go as well.
Right. It's so true. And the more of us that are out there saying it, the more people will hear, and this is how we change the world, right?
Yes. One scream from the rooftops at a time.
Exactly. All right, Marin, thank you so very much for being with us today, folks. The book is Ready Enough, and by Marin Laukka. And again, look below and we'll provide you links to be able to easily click to where you need to go to find out more about her and her book and her coaching. So
thank you so much. It was such a wonderful conversation. I'm glad that we connected wherever we connected, because obviously we are very in sync. So I'm really grateful for this conversation, and for anyone listening, I'd be excited to hear what you took away as well.
Absolutely. Yeah. Wherever you are, love, subscribe, comment. The more voices are added to this conversation, the more powerful it becomes. So.
Yes.
All right. Thanks, everybody. I'm going to be back next week with another great episode. In the meantime, remember, happiness is a choice. You can always choose to be happy first. I'll see you next week.